Do you ever feel like you're walking on eggshells in your relationship? Maybe you feel like you have to be so careful about every conversation you have to avoid conflict or setting off your partner or getting into a fight. And it just doesn't really feel very emotionally safe to just be. If this is you, this is really common and normal. And today we're going to be exploring why you feel that way, as well as how to help and how to help things feel more emotionally safe in your relationship. So, hi, I'm Emma Coble. I am a therapist who works with couples with trauma and women with trauma in Colorado and in Florida. So, if you are like in this situation of you're afraid how your partner is going to react, afraid you're going to say the wrong thing, afraid you're going to set them off, I just want to say like how exhausting this can feel and how normal it can feel too. It doesn't mean your relationship is necessarily doomed or over if you feel this way. Yeah, this is a thing that happens a lot inside our relationships when there has been a time when it hasn't really been safe, when there's been a lot of conflict, when there's sort of been a breakdown in that ability to just be vulnerable with each other. um, and it is really exhausting. It's exhausting to constantly be wondering what you're going to get if you say something, to maybe be holding things in that you don't feel like you can say, to be overthinking every kind of conversation you're having. So you might be fearing like your partner's anger or criticism, or you might fear that if you do say things, things are going to escalate, or your partner is going to actually withdraw. You might also fear that if you say how you feel, it will actually make things worse rather than helping, because maybe that has actually happened in the past in this relationship or in other relationships. Maybe you've tried to talk about how you feel before, but you felt dismissed or misunderstood. Or you're stuck in a pattern where there's kind of I've mentioned this in other videos, but one person tends to withdraw in conflict, the other person moves toward connection or pursues or criticizes. And this can be a really hard cycle to get out of. So, your body might just be in the state of like trying to protect you, being hyper alert, and being on edge to protect you from that negative cycle continuing. So, if you're in this state, you might notice things like your heart rate increasing, being constantly on edge, feeling your body sort of clenching or protecting in some way. Maybe your thoughts are racing and thinking about the things that could go wrong. If you have trauma, this is also made even worse. So if there are patterns, maybe inside the family you came from, of it not really being safe to communicate your feelings, or of a parent, dismissing or pulling away when you did so, this can be even harder to feel comfortable sharing how you feel. So when you are in this state, it's also really hard to come from the heart, communicate clearly, respond with empathy, because you're so activated here. It totally makes sense. It's The problem is that also when this is happening, often your partner's nervous system is also really worked up in this way. So it can be really hard to get anywhere, and it can feel really dangerous to communicate with one another. Each partner is often interpreting what's happening in the other person's nervous system as an attack or as rejection. So it can feel really hard to actually communicate needs and actually get closer through this process. But EFT couples therapy, it does help calm this cycle down, and it really does help you reconnect and feel safer with each other. So, how does EFT couples therapy help you stop walking on eggshells in your relationship? So, it's as I've talked about in some other videos, it is the most researched and effective. It's one of the most researched and effective approaches for creating these secure, lasting bonds and helping these behavioral changes that actually stick inside the relationship. And it's not about like staying on the surface or like tactics or things like that. Like, it is truly about really understanding deeper needs, and I'll go into this more, but like understanding the deeper needs and being able to communicate them in a way that your partner can hear. So the first thing is identifying the cycle that you are stuck in with your partner. So this is really important because early on in couples therapy, the therapist will help you identify the cycle is the enemy. So the cycle of one person maybe withdrawing and shutting down, the other person getting really activated and scared, and then criticizing or pursuing, and then the other person withdrawing more is an example of this cycle. That cycle that you get stuck in together, that it's neither one of you is causing it, it's neither one of your faults, it's a pattern. That is the problem, not the fact that Joe always he goes and plays video games when he's upset. Like, it is the cycle, it is the dynamic that is the problem. And often when we can see that, it becomes a lot easier to, first of all, like, we have less shame ourselves, and it can feel easier to feel loving feelings toward our partner again. It also helps create space for vulnerability. So when we're doing things like shutting down or criticizing, when we say something like, you never listen to me, this can sound really harsh, and it can sound like a criticism, of course. But if we can understand the deeper need underneath that of like what's happening when, I say, hey, I had a rough day at work, and you instantly are like looking at your phone and not looking up at me, maybe I feel alone when that happens. So being able to say when, you're looking at your phone and I'm trying to communicate with you, I feel really alone and really sad. And being able to share what that's like in your body and what emotions are coming up for you, and also what this might remind you of in your childhood and why this maybe feels so painful for you. Sometimes giving those context things can also help. When we understand that and we really see our partner's vulnerability, of course we want to change our behavior. When it's not, God, you're always on your phone, you never pay any attention to me, that makes us feel defensive. But when we really hear what's underneath that in a safe environment, when our nervous systems are regulated, it can be like, oh, that makes so much sense, and I want to show up for my partner. Of course I do. So, instead of like saying something like to your partner, like, you're too sensitive, we might be able to say, like, I get scared when things feel tense. I don't know how to make it better. I feel, inadequate. I don't know what to do, and then I shut down. So these vulnerable conversations help the nervous system feel safe again. They help us we learn through EFT how to co-regulate by having these conversations with each other, because we're responding to our partner's nervous system with care rather than criticism, and each partner is feeling held. And it's not always as simple as like we go into after EFT, now we always are regulated every moment of the day. No, like, you're still gonna have times where you get caught in a cycle perhaps, and then you're able to understand what's happening, see it quickly, and get yourself out of the cycle. So also EFT helps you repair conflict, not just avoid it. So rather than stuffing hurt under the rug, you're acknowledging it without blaming the other person. Like, saying something like, when you said you'd be home at 10 and you actually came home at 2 in the morning, I felt hurt and scared. Like, that being able to say that rather than just stuff it and then be resentful is really important. It also allows your partner to offer comfort for you when you're able to say this in a way that they can hear rather than get defensive. So EFT also helps you create a secure bond that actually lasts. So really feeling like you're on the same team as your partner, that you don't need to walk on eggshells, that you have the tools to express what you're feeling without getting caught in the cycle, and that you can have disagreements with each other without losing the other person. So, how long does EFT couples therapy take? So, many couples in the first stage, we're de escalating and we're identifying the cycle, and we are identifying the cycle as the problem, not you. And so, most couples I work with start to feel some relief after just a few sessions, but oftentimes a longer, like 8 to 20 sessions, is when you really start to feel like more of a full transformation inside the relationship, depending on how deep these patterns run and how committed both partners are to this process. But studies show that 70% of couples who complete EFT move from distress to satisfaction, and those results last years later. So, if you are in a painful cycle that it feels like you can't interrupt, wanting to build empathy and safety in your relationship, wanting to know how to repair conflict, deepen your intimacy and connection, I highly recommend you check out EFT couples therapy. And if you are in Denver, Colorado, or Florida, I offer free 15-minute consultations. Reach out and have a great day.